Hi, welcome to Storytime with Gigi. Today we're going to be reading a Disney Pixar Monsters Inc. storybook collection story called Welcome to Monsters Inc. I love this collection. Every night all around the world, monsters called scarers would sneak through children's closet doors. It was their job to collect screams. Those screams powered the city of Monstropolis, where all the monsters lived. One night, a little boy woke up. A monster was standing in his bedroom. "Ah!" screamed the boy. "Ah!" screamed the monster. Suddenly, the lights came on. It was just a pretend bedroom and a robotic boy. The monster was actually a training classroom. The monster was actually in a training classroom at the biggest power company in Monstropolis, Monsters, Inc. The teacher sighed. The monster had left the closet door open again. Leaving the door open is the worst mistake any employee can make because, the teacher asked, "It could let in a draft?" the monster guessed. "It could let in a child," a voice boomed. Mr. Waternoose, the president of Monsters, Inc., stormed in. He was responsible for making sure his scarers were trained to collect enough screams to power Monstropolis. But everyone knew that if a human child came into Monstropolis, it would be very dangerous. "There's nothing more toxic or deadly than a human child," Mr. Waternoose exclaimed. Unlike the scarers in training, one monster was very good at collecting screams. His name was James P. Sullivan, Sully for short. He was a big, furry blue monster and one of Monstropolis's top scarers. Across town, Sully exercised in his apartment. He had to stay in top shape if he wanted to keep being scary. His roommate and best friend, Mike Wazowski, coached him. "Feel the burn," Mike ordered as Sully pushed heavy furniture across the room. Sully was famous for collecting more screams than any other employee at Monsters, Inc., which made him very important. Human children were getting harder to scare. Sully was one of the only monsters who could still frighten them. One day, a co-worker named Randall watched Mike and Sully getting ready for work. Randall was a mean monster who could blend into walls. He was very jealous of Sully. He would do anything to be top scarer. Randall jumped out and startled Mike. "I'm in the zone today," he sneered. "Gonna be doing some serious scaring, putting up some big numbers." When their shift started, all the monsters went to the scare floor. A long conveyor belt dropped a child's closet door at each monster's station. When a red signal flashed, each scarer would walk through his door and into the room of a sleeping human child. If all went well, the child would scream, filling up a power canister. Sully glanced at the scare scoreboard. He and Randall had almost the same score. "May the best monster win," Sully held out his hand to Randall. "I plan to," Randall replied. A buzzer went off. It was time to scare. Randall quickly made a lot of children scream, but Sully frightened an entire slumber party. Mike popped in a fresh canister each time one filled up to collect as many of the screams as possible. Sully was back in the lead. Suddenly, a warning alarm sounded. A scarer named George Sanderson had returned from the human world with a child's sock on his back. All the monsters gasped. A child's sock could be just as toxic as a child. In seconds, a squad from the Child Detection Agency arrived to decontaminate George. As soon as work ended, Mike rushed to meet his girlfriend, Celia. She also worked at Monsters, Inc. Celia was a pretty monster with one eye and snakes for hair. Mike had planned a special date for her birthday. But Roz, the cranky office manager, blocked Mike's way. Fun-filled evening planned for tonight, she asked. Well, as a matter of fact, Mike began. Then I'm sure you filed your paperwork, Roz said. Mike gulped. He'd forgotten to do it. Again. Luckily, Sully offered to do it for him. When Sully returned to the scare floor, he noticed a closet door that had been left behind. Hello? Sully called out. No one answered. Sully opened the door to take a peek, but the room was empty. Sully shrugged and closed the door. Just then, he heard a noise. He turned around and saw a little girl grabbing his tail. Ah! Sully screamed. He tried to run, but the little girl thought it was a game. No matter how hard Sully tried, he couldn't get the little girl to go back through her closet door. He decided to find Mike. He'd know what to do. Sully hid the little girl and left Monsters, Inc. with her. He raced to the restaurant where Mike was having dinner with Celia. Sully peered in and saw Mike. He raced inside and squeezed into a booth next to Mike. He held up a menu so Celia couldn't hear him. Look in the bag, he whispered to Mike. What bag? Mike asked. Sully looked down and his jaw dropped. The bag and the child were walking away. The little girl hopped up on a table. Boo, she said with a giggle. The monsters nearby panicked. The chef called the child detection agency. There's a kid here, a human kid, he yelled into the phone. The little girl giggled as she ran around the restaurant. Mike found an empty box and scooped her up into it. He tossed the box to Sully. Let's get out of here, Mike shouted. Just as they escaped, the CDA arrived. They started to decontaminate monsters. Celia and Mike were separated from each other. Mike wanted to go back to help, but Sully grabbed him. They needed to run. There's Celia. Sully and Mike brought the child to their apartment. They put on oven mitts and flippers so she couldn't touch them. Outside their window, CDA helicopters flew by. The CDA officers were searching the city for the child. Mike and Sully knew they had to keep her hidden or they would be in big trouble. But the child wouldn't keep still. She chased Mike around the apartment. As he tried to get away, Mike tripped into a trash can. The little girl giggled. Her laughter made the lights burn so bright they popped. What was that? Asked Sully. I have no idea, Mike replied, shocked. They gave the little girl paper and crayons to color with while they tried to figure out how to get her back home. Somehow they needed to get her closet door. Soon the little girl rubbed her eyes and yawned. Sully laid down some newspaper on the floor for her to sleep on, but the little girl hopped right into the bed. Hey, you're going to get your germs all over it, Sully exclaimed. The girl just snuggled under the covers. Sully sighed. He knew it was no use. He was about to leave when the little girl pointed to his closet door fearfully. She held up a picture she had drawn. Hey, that looks like Randall. Sully sighed. Randall must be your monster. He realized the little girl was afraid Randall would come through the closet door and scare her. Sully tried to show her that there was nothing in his closet. Finally, he agreed to stay with her until she fell asleep. As he watched her drift off, Sully couldn't help thinking she didn't look so dangerous after all. Sully told Mike he wanted to bring the girl back to Monsters, Inc. so they could find her closet door and get her home. He had even thought of a name for her, Boo. Mike didn't agree. What are we going to do, waltz right up to the factory, he asked. That gave Sully an idea. If he and Mike made Boo look like a monster, then they could take her right into the factory. The next morning, that's just what they did. Now all they had to do was get her home. And that's our story. I hope you liked it. Make sure that you like and subscribe and share with your friends. Bye until next time.